Alright, episode 55, and today we're talking about the Fennec fox. Now, on top of this being a very special video for me because it is the favorite animal of someone very near and dear, a very close friend of mine, I actually learned a decent amount about the Fennec fox, and personally, I think this is the best suited animal for desert environments, and we'll get into that shortly. Before we do, let's discuss what I'm doing here with the exhibit. Now, if you are used to my videos, you may be a little confused and a little surprised to see me use a concrete barrier as the main constructive fence. However, this is mostly because I feel I haven't done enough when it comes to showing how to do an internal exhibit. So I figured that this would be a great species to work with since you don't need much space. Granted, even though you don't need much space, I gave it like 10 times as much space, but I also feel like it's better for creativity. With that being said, let's get into the animal, shall we? Now, the scientific name of the Fennec fox is Vulpes zerda, which is the Latin word for fox, and then the Moroccan term for a lively gathering. The term Fennec was borrowed from French, which in itself was borrowed from the Arabic fanak, which means to persist. However, it is also thought that it itself also came from Old Persian and also just kind of meant fox. So it's a little muddled in what that term means, but, pardon, I'm getting over a cold. But, as we can tell, persist is a great way to put it for this very small yet hardy species. Now, like with all dogs, it is primarily carnivorous, and due to its size, it's not exactly hunting down antelope. The animal only being roughly 2.2 to 4.6 pounds, which makes it the smallest canid in the entire world, even smaller than a chihuahua, can only really hunt down insects and rodents. So most of its diet does consist of insects, tubers, lizards, little things that scurry in the ground. And, like I said, tubers and small greens. Now, they can be found in North Africa, all the way from Mauritania, and all the way into the Sinai Peninsula. That's that little area that branches off from Egypt that connects the Middle East to Africa. They have also allegedly have been seen in places like Israel and Palestine, but for the most part, it's only 100% certain, ending in the Sinai Peninsula. Now, they are a burrowing species. It seems to be a trend with a lot of the more recent animals, but nonetheless, a burrowing species, and their burrows can be as large as 1,300 square feet. And, since how they live in family units, these dens can actually connect with other burrows, greatly increasing the size, depending on how many families there are. Now, as I stated in the beginning of the episode, they may be the most perfectly adapted animal in the desert. And here's a few reasons why. So, their tan fur is thick yet light, and the tan color reflects sunlight. However, it does hold on to the heat it has, sort of like a puffy coat, so that in the nighttime, or so that during nighttime, they are still warm. For those of you that may not be aware, deserts do not hold heat that well. It's hot in the day, but once the sun goes down, the ground doesn't hold the heat very well, so it will get very cold very fast. On top of their thick fur, they also have a bit of padding underneath their paws to aid with the scorching 100-degree heat that the sand can definitely reach. If you've been to a hot desert, I know I've been out close to the Mojave, and trust me, just touching some of that sand feels like you're being burned alive. It's very good to have something covering something sensitive like open skin. On top of that, their large ears also aid in their endeavors in fighting the desert heat. For instance, the size of it works similar to that of elephants. The extra body mass and the thinness of it allows the heat from the body to be expelled through the ears. On top of that, it is also thought that they do use it to shield their eyes from the sun during certain points in the day, and even being able to hear any of its small skittering prey, as I'm sure you would be aware. Now, they actually, proportionally, have the largest ears of any canine. Even the big droopy ears of basset hounds and other similar animals do not hold a candle to the small wings the Fennec fox has attached to its head. We aren't done with how they are very well adapted, because internally, they actually almost never need to drink liquid water. You see, they're able to lick the dew off the inside of their dens, and because they have very strong kidneys, are able to suck as much water out of their prey as they possibly can. This meaning that simply the liquids that come from, like I said earlier, insects and tubers can completely supplement their water intake. Now, that doesn't mean they certainly wouldn't take the chance if they must, but it does go to show how hardy these animals are. And to round off their evolutionarily impressive skill set, they have something known as a nictitating membrane, which is a transparent third eyelid that protects the eye of the animal. Many animals have this, but the more common ones you may be aware of would be something like birds and reptiles. They will usually use it so that they can keep their eyes open for long periods of time while hunting. Something like a crocodile or a hawk may have this for that exact purpose. However, the Fennec fox has it as sort of built-in goggles to protect its eyes from sand. Now, unfortunately, as I seem to have struggled in the past with many of the animals in the series, there's not a lot of information about their evolutionary line. However, if you would allow me to make some assumptions, I'd like to state them now. So the closest living relative to the Fennec fox is something known as the Blandford fox, which are also extremely small. They also have massive ears and are native to the Indian Ocean coast, essentially South Asia, Southeast Asia, and parts of the Middle East. They are also seen in Central Asia, mostly the steppe areas. Now, due to this, I believe that the animal most likely evolved somewhere within that area. Seeing how the Fennec fox is specifically evolved for desert life, I believe an extinct ancestor of the two most likely came about somewhere in Central Asia, and the ancestor of the Fennec fox made its way through the Middle East, dealing with the deserts of Mesopotamia and the Arab Peninsula, making its way into Africa, where it currently lives. Now, those two species, the Fennec and the Balfords, had separated from the species known as the pale fox 7.4 million years ago, and that species is also still alive today. They separated from one another, the Balford and the Fennec, roughly 4 to 4.5 million years ago. And ever since, there hasn't seemed to be too much difference in their appearance. Now, when it comes to cultural influence, believe it or not, most of the influence you'll find is in the modern day. For instance, it is the national animal of Algeria in a more professional aspect, but the Fennec had also taken a very large inspiration with many different modern online groups and animated performances. For instance, they have been used quite prevalently in the furry community. For those of you who don't know, look it up. The furry community uses the animal very often when it comes to the large ears and expressions as a more humanistic expressions compared to things like wolves and foxes. I had to do too much research for my own liking in this aspect, but seeing how it's a very big part of the culture, I had to do it. On top of that, they were also used quite prevalently in animation. Now, you can see representatives in things such as Zootopia, and being somewhat of an inspiration for the character Beelzebub in the animated YouTube series Hell of a Boss. Now, if you're thinking of getting a Fennec fox as a pet, let me end those aspirations fucking immediately. They are still a fox, which means they are going to scream constantly. They make very high-pitched whining noises, and they'll definitely do it during the night, seeing how that's one of the ways they naturally will avoid the heat of the desert. They also will pee on everything, and from what I've been told by zookeepers, fox pee is the most vile scent that you can never wash off, that you will ever have to deal with. You will ruin your social life owning a fox as a pet, because the scent of their urine is so pungent that you couldn't wash it off with anything. Ever. However, something small like this, and obviously very sought after for being adorable, certainly is going to gain the attraction of exotic pet owners from around the world. But anyway, that is the end of this episode. As you can see, I put a little tribute to my friend in the exhibit because, you know what, seems about right. And I will be doing this for other animals that are favorites of my friends and family, so expect me to be a gushy nerd later on. But anyway, that's all we have for today. Until next time, thank you for watching. Go outside, touch grass, hug your loved ones, and bye-bye.